Hello there, this video is for some additional information to my last video about the te particle and how it can be used for hearsay. Thank you for the comments in the last video, which made me realize that I overlooked some important things and I want to add this information in this video. I always do a lot of research for this video so I can use references and sources to back up what I say, even with content I'm familiar with. Doesn't mean I can't make mistakes or miss something important, and in this case it looks like my research wasn't sufficient enough. And I'm thankful for the comments who challenge the content or add information I missed. So I went back and did some more research on the topic and even asked a Japanese viewer of my clips who I often see in the comment section about it, and crossed my fingers he would answer my questions. Thankfully he did, and he confirmed my research and added some additional information to it I also want to go over. First of all, the information in the last videos are not wrong. You can use soda and the te particle for hearsay as I explained there. However, you also can use toiu in the same way as hearsay. Other examples I found about it, it seems that soda and toiu are pretty much interchangeable, but was also confirmed by the Japanese viewer. And so is the te particle. However, the te particle is a bit more casual speech, and there are other things you have to be careful about, which he pointed out to me and I will go over a bit later. But I also want to give some additional information about the te particle so I can clarify some comments I got on the last video. What is the te particle exactly? The te particle is a so-called quoting particle. Quoting particles are used for, like the name says, to quote something. They are used with verbs that deal with communications, or verbs, like to say, to hear, to read, to write, to think, to plan, and so on. Just as disclaimer, the te particle has also other uses, but in this video we focus on it being a quoting particle. There are only two quoting particles, as we know already, the te particle and also the particle to. That's right, like the to in toiu. To is used for polite speech and for writing, and te is more casual speech. If the to particle is used as quoting particle, it's interchangeable with the te particle. But here is where it gets difficult. In many cases, what comes after the te particle, like in toiu, is being omitted and you are just left with the te. Now, to figure out what the te means, you need to use context, grammar, and one other thing I didn't talk about in the first video, and that's pronunciation. I don't know why I left out something so important like the pronunciation, probably because my hearing comprehension isn't good enough yet to pick up such subtle pronunciation like it is being used with the te particle. At least not in the flow of a normal conversation. And maybe I was just hoping to out-grammar the pronunciation. When I talked to the Japanese viewer of my clipping channels, it also came up how important the pronunciation is, and that grammar not always is sufficient enough to differentiate what the te particle means, and sometimes you just have to go with the pronunciation. So it was definitely a mistake by me to just leave it out. So for hearsay you pronounce it like this. You have a normal flow through the sentence and then you emphasize the te at the end.
て、て、来週の授業は休みだって。来週の授業は休みだって。山田さんは明日来れないって。山田さんは明日来れないって。凛さんはまだ学生だって。凛さんはまだ学生だって。
Final thing I want to say here, and I mentioned in the other video, is about te iwareteru. In the last video I said te replaces so, also so iwareteru. But as we know now, more correctly it replaces to, also to iwareteru. But so iwareteru seems also to be correct, but it is more rare. Then what we have here is just toiu conjugated into the passive form and the continuous form of teiru. This expression translates into what people are saying or it's being said. It leaves out who is the source and how many sources there are, or in other words, keeping the source anonymous. Important here is that you can conjugate toiu differently, and because the conjugation can change the meaning of the phrase, you can't just leave it out like you can with teiu, so you have to keep it as te iwareteru. So important is toiu can also be used as hearsay and can be replaced with the te particle, but is also interchangeable with soda. Also to identify the te particle and what it means, the pronunciation of the te particle is very important. But I hope with this additional information I cleared some of the questions and also confusions up from the last video. But please ask in the comments if something is unclear or there is a problem with something I mentioned in this video. Or also the last one. Check out my clipping channels. I use English and Japanese subtitles with furigana in them, which also helps with Japanese learning. Links are in the description. Thank you and have a wonderful day.